A wealthy man pursued a small beggar girl who had taken something from him on the street, but upon realizing her true intentions, he was overcome with emotion and wept. On a lively city street, the afternoon sun blazed fiercely, yet Lucas Warburton walked with an air of indifference, as if it held no sway over him. The tailored suit and luxurious watch were clear symbols of the empire he had constructed, frequently at the expense of those who dared to oppose him. At 45, his prematurely silver hair and eyes as cold as onyx exuded an air of authority and intimidation wherever he roamed. Just as he was poised to make a call, a gentle nudge disrupted his focus. Initially, he gave it little thought. The sidewalk buzzed with activity, yet in an instant, as he delved into his suit pocket, a shadow crossed his face. His wallet had vanished, twisting on his heel like a poised serpent, his eyes fixed on a diminutive silhouette fading into the distance. "Halt! You thief!" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the street and capturing the gaze of onlookers. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The girl, swift as a startled feline, dashed further into the throng, weaving adeptly among the crowd. A child, he reflected, his frustration rising as the realization hit him. A young one had the audacity to pilfer from him. His injured pride swiftly morphed into a bubbling fury, his hands trembling with the fervor. With a sly grin that concealed a more sinister intent, he straightened his silk tie, concluding that involving the police was unwarranted. Absolutely not, that would be far too simple. "Return at once, you mischievous creature," he shouted, springing into pursuit. Onlookers hastily moved out of the way as the imposing, furious figure barreled toward them. Vendors hurriedly stepped aside as the girl weaved through their stalls, causing goods to scatter behind her. Lucas stomped over the discarded goods, his gaze unwaveringly fixed on her. "Flee while you still have the chance," he whispered, his tone dark and foreboding. "The further you venture, the more challenging your lesson will become." The entrepreneur moved forward, each stride firm and commanding, his breath regulated by years of training at his elite gym, and his determination unyielding. Every time the girl cast a look back, he noticed the growing fear reflected in her large, dark eyes. "Don't waste your energy on escape," he mocked, savoring the terror that contorted her features. "I could pursue you endlessly, you cunning little street urchin." The pursuit led them through increasingly constricted alleyways, saturated with the aroma of food and the clamor of the crowd, aspects that Lucas found completely distasteful. The girl knocked over boxes and trash cans in an attempt to hinder him, yet he leaped over them effortlessly, like a skilled hunter on the prowl. He scoffed inwardly, feeling a sense of disdain. "Your clever maneuvers are merely delaying the unavoidable." His meticulously crafted shirt clung to him, drenched in perspiration, yet he pressed on undeterred. He observed her movements becoming sluggish, the weariness taking hold. Feeling fatigued, he shouted, his voice echoing against the confined walls. "Your time is running out, you petty thief." As they ventured further, the streets grew increasingly shadowy, a stark contrast to the lively thoroughfare they had left behind. He felt the noose tightening around her with each twist and turn. Before long, he mused, she would exhaust her choices. He contemplated the near capture of the rats, a sense of satisfaction washing over him as she paused at the fork in the path. Her fear was tangible, her swift, elegant movements now wavering. Maintaining a deliberate rhythm, Lucas relished the fear he had incited. "Observe her," he mused with a wicked smile, as she trembled like a trapped creature. No one dares to take from Lucas Warburton without facing the consequences. As they ventured deeper into the darkness, he observed her sprint into a dimly lit alley, urgency consuming her, the worn soles of her sandals striking the ground in a hurried cadence. Predictable and foolish, he mused, halting at the doorway. "Now there's no escape left for you, little rat." He composedly straightened his cuffs, casting a measured glance at the shadowy corridor from which she had escaped. His cold gaze shimmered with a perverse delight. "Let's observe how long you can endure in the darkness," he whispered ominously. "From this day forward, you'll wish you had never encountered me." Lucas stepped into the alley, each movement measured and purposeful, the sound of his Italian shoes resonating softly as he advanced. Soft illumination seeped through the slender crevices between structures, creating elongated silhouettes, yet he navigated the obscurity with ease. The foul odor of refuse and moisture barely registered with him, it was merely a component of his demented scheme for retribution. "I can hear you breathing, you little thief." His voice sliced through the silence like a sharp blade. "Your heart must be racing as fiercely as those coins you took from me." The soft flutter of currency and the gentle jingle of coins reached his ears. As he approached, Lucas caught sight of the girl, huddled behind a weathered trash bin. With a sense of anxiety, she meticulously counted the ill-gotten cash, her grimy fingers awkwardly navigating the bills. "What a spectacle," he scoffed with a wicked smile. "Gathering your ill-gotten gains like a scavenger hoarding its scraps." Jenny stood still at the sound of his voice, gripping the crumpled bills in her delicate, shaking hands. Beads of sweat coursed down her dirty face, blending seamlessly with the filth of the alley. Her wide, fearful gaze fixed on the imposing silhouette, obstructing her escape. "Please, sir," she stammered, her voice a mere whisper. I didn't intend to, I simply required." Lucas chuckled, a harsh noise that reverberated through the narrow passage. He advanced, observing her retreat even more. A dim glow seeped in from the street, creating shadows that danced across his face, highlighting his disdainful expression. "Are you aware of the price of this suit? The one you had the audacity to lay your hands on," he mocked, adjusting his cuffs, "worth more than all you could pilfer in an entire year." Jenny made a desperate effort to slip past him, her thin legs propelling her forward like a startled deer. Yet the fractured pavement had its own intentions. "No, no," she cried, her foot caught in a hole. "Absolutely not." She fell to the earth with a thud, a gasp of agony slipping from her parched mouth. Her knees grazed the coarse asphalt, ripping her tattered clothes and the delicate skin beneath. The crimson mark on the ragged cloth was overshadowed by the overwhelming fear that gripped her heart. "Rise, rise," her thoughts urged in a frenzy. "It's time to move swiftly." Lucas observed, relishing the moment, his movements deliberate and unhurried, akin to a feline playing with its catch, cherishing each instant before the decisive blow. Jenny's soft cries resonated in a haunting tune that captivated him. "How utterly disappointing," he scoffed, halting mere feet away from her. "I had the impression that street rats were meant to be faster." She attempted to crawl away, but a sharp, relentless pain surged through her knee. Crimson droplets seeped down, gathering into tiny shadowy stains on the filthy ground. Her hands shook with an unsteady fervor as she fought to raise herself. "Please, sir," she implored, her thick tears carving paths down her grime-streaked face. "Allow me to clarify." The elegant leather wallet had fallen from her hand during her tumble, sending bills and cards sprawling across the grimy alleyway. Lucas bent down to gather his things, his eyes fixed on the frightened figure huddled in front of him. "Could you clarify that?" he inquired, pretending to care. "Can you clarify your reasoning behind believing you could escape the consequences of taking from me, Lucas Warburton? Proceed, this promises to be interesting." The haunting sound of sirens caused Jenny to retreat even deeper into herself. Her cries echoed in the void, intertwining with the distant hum of the bustling city outside. The ache in her knee was persistent, yet it was the dread hammering in her chest that overwhelmed her. "Please don't turn me in," she whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. "My mother, she's fading away." Lucas halted, arching an eyebrow in a blend of astonishment and skepticism. He observed her tears cascade, creating damp trails on her soiled cheeks. "A tale of woe to manipulate the villain," he sneered, his voice dripping with irony. "Do you genuinely believe that's going to be effective? That I would genuinely accept that?" Summoning the last remnants of her strength, Jenny compelled herself to confront his frigid stare, her hands tightly balled, knuckles pale as snow. Her voice trembled, every word fractured by tears. "It's not untrue," she faltered. Kindly, she requires medication. Lucas straightened his silk tie, a nervous gesture that betrayed his unease with the unexpected situation. Her cries echoed in the alley, slowly eroding his hardened facade. What makes you think I should trust you? He insisted, his tone remaining icy yet tinged with a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor. What's stopping us from robbing a pharmacy, then? The wailing sirens intensified, sending Jenny's anxiety soaring. Crimson droplets from her knee marked the concrete below. She leaned her back against the frigid wall, appearing even more diminutive and exposed. Please, Mr. Warburton, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The price of the medication is exorbitant, and without it, her life hangs in the balance. I would go to great lengths for her. I understand that taking what's not mine is wrong, but the thought of losing her is unbearable. The young girl's voice trembled, her big, tear-laden eyes imploring. Lucas moved nearer, his towering presence enveloping the tiny, huddled form in a shroud of darkness. In the shadowy glow of the alley, her tears shimmered on her smudged face, imparting a delicate, urgent radiance. He was a formidable figure, an experienced entrepreneur, recognized for his ability to make tough decisions with unwavering resolve. Yet here he found himself, at an unfamiliar crossroads. So, you little thief, he remarked in a voice that was unsettlingly serene. What are the reasons I shouldn't contact the authorities at this moment? Jenny raised her tear-streaked face, her deep, sorrowful eyes locking onto his with a final, unspoken request. Her entire form quaked, a blend of agony, terror, and consuming hopelessness. If I end up in jail, she choked out between sobs, who will take care of her? My mother. She relies solely on me. Lucas fixed his intense gaze on her, absorbing each subtle movement, every slight tremor. Crimson from her knee gathered on the grimy earth, yet it was the sound of her vulnerable plea that stirred an unsettling emotion within him. He was familiar with deception, yet her anguish felt genuine, in a manner he found difficult to overlook. Demonstrate it, he declared at last, his tone icy and resolute. Demonstrate your honesty, or I will have to involve the authorities. Jenny took a deep breath, her small hands brushing away the tears and dirt that marked her face. She attempted to rise, suppressing a gasp as her weight pressed heavily on her wounded leg. My name is Jenny, she said, her voice quivering yet resolute. Join me, and I can reveal it to you. Lucas let out a dry chuckle, fiddling with the elegant watch on his wrist, his impatience unmistakable. Trailing a street kid into the unknown felt ridiculous, yet there was something in her determination, the way she pronounced her name, that resonated deeply. If this is a trap, he cautioned, his voice dark and threatening, you'll regret not having the police come for you first. Jenny limped toward the edge of the alley, each step a reflection of her unwavering determination, her discomfort concealed beneath a glimmer of optimism. Crimson continued to flow from her knee, marking a shadowy path as she pressed on, determined not to falter. It's not far, she whispered, primarily to herself. Just a moment, Mom, I'm on my way back. As they ventured further into the neighborhood, the environment became increasingly dilapidated. Lucas surveyed the scene of decaying structures, shattered glass, and debris-littered streets, his discomfort growing with each passing moment. His Italian suit and polished shoes stood in stark contrast to the surrounding poverty. Where are we headed, precisely? He inquired, his tone laced with a hint of concern. This area doesn't appear to be one where you'd expect to encounter expensive medicine. A young girl paused in front of a quaint, softly illuminated pharmacy. Through the dusty windows, he observed shelves that were only lightly filled. Her hands shook slightly as she gestured. The medication. They're in there, she murmured, her voice trembling. Every box comes with a hefty price tag, and she requires 3 each month. That's precisely what I aimed to achieve. The store felt tight and shadowy, with a layer of dust blanketing the assorted items on the shelves. A tired pharmacist cast a sidelong glance at Jenny, his gaze sharpening as he took in her ragged attire and the scrape on her knee. My mum's medicine, she said, her voice wavering. 3 boxes of the, I'll handle it, Lucas interjected, reaching for his wallet. As he sifted through a pile of crisp bills, he noticed the pharmacist's eyes grow wide at the unexpected sight. The girl remained still next to him, her fingers gripping the worn edge of her shirt. Are you really covering the cost of my mum's medicine? She inquired, struggling to contain her emotions, her youthful gaze brimming with appreciation. Without looking at her, Lucas shifted his attention to the pharmacist. What is the cost for each box? He inquired bluntly. The counter employee, clearly taken aback by the impeccably dressed gentleman before him, hesitantly articulated the price. Lucas nodded, confidently placing the full payment on the counter. For how long has your mother been unwell? He inquired, his gaze turned away, sidestepping her question. Jenny swallowed, her gaze fixed on the pharmacist as they rushed to collect the boxes. 3 months, she murmured, her eyes fixed on the medicine laid out before her. Initially, we were able to cope. But then, her voice faltered, and she brushed away a tear with her grimy hand. Insurance doesn't provide coverage, and the price of each box exceeds a month's rent. Lucas tucked the coins into his pocket and grasped the bag of medicine, his expression unwavering. Yet deep down, he couldn't rid himself of the disquieting sensation that accompanied the girl's gaze, which seemed to follow him with an anticipation of his every action, as though she were waiting for him to abruptly look away. What's the next destination? He inquired, his tone remaining resolute yet softer than earlier. And don't attempt anything amusing, he added. Jenny hobbled to the door, holding the bag of medicine tightly against her chest as if it were the sole anchor in her tumultuous world. Her hands quivered ever so slightly as she indicated the way forward. It's nearby, she stated, her tone imbued with a sudden urgency that had been absent just moments earlier. Mother requires it immediately. She was not in a good place when I departed. The journey to Jenny's home was short, yet every step seemed to weigh down more than the one before. Her time-worn facade towered over the adjacent, similarly dilapidated structures, casting a shadow that whispered of more glorious days now faded into memory. Jenny's nervous eyes flitted about as they drew near. This is it, she whispered, her hands trembling as she nudged the splintered door ajar. Kindly refrain from forming opinions based solely on appearances. Within, the scene was even more bleak than what lay outside. The small room was cluttered with battered furniture, and an unsettling blend of mildew and something more sinister lingered in the air, a whisper of illness. Lucas felt a knot in his stomach, not due to the poverty enveloping him, but from the sheer intensity of it all. Where is your mother? He inquired, his tone gentle as a hush enveloped the space. Jenny limped further into the house, her voice growing more frantic as she shouted for her mother. The stillness that reverberated constricted her heart. Lucas followed her, the sound of his costly shoes echoing against the worn floorboards. Mum, her voice trembled, please respond. The faint glow seeping through the grimy panes unveiled a scene that sent shivers down their spines. At the heart of the cozy living room rested a woman, still and silent. Her raven locks cascaded around her porcelain complexion, and her lips bore a subtle hue of lavender. No, 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 Jenny exclaimed, collapsing beside her mother and momentarily disregarding the pain in her knee. Mom, please, wake up, wake up. Lucas lingered in the doorway, his gaze fixed on the unfolding scene, his face a canvas of unexplainable emotions. After years of unwavering confidence, the formidable businessman suddenly found himself completely adrift, uncertain of his next move. Jenny's authentic distress and the delicate form sprawled on the ground started to erode his tough exterior. Does she require assistance? He managed to inquire, his tone gruffer than normal. The young girl was weeping fiercely now, her delicate shoulders trembling as she held tightly to her mother. Tears cascaded down her cheeks, landing on Samantha's still face as her tiny hands desperately searched for any hint of vitality. Please, she implored, her voice trembling with grief. Please don't go, Mom, I have the medicine, I'm right here. A distant siren pierced the quiet, causing Lucas to flinch. His eyes moved from the motionless figure on the floor to the sorrowful girl, and in that moment, the man who had forged his empire through the downfall of others felt the heavy burden of his decisions settle upon him. If only he had heeded the warnings earlier, a sharp taste of regret lingered on his tongue. If only I hadn't squandered all that time seeking retribution. With a surge of determination, Lucas shook off his paralysis and swiftly reached for Samantha's neck, his fingers quivering as he sought her pulse. In that dismal room, time felt suspended as 3 lives teetered on a fragile thread. "There's still time," he whispered, retrieving his cell phone from his pocket. "It must exist." With trembling hands, Lucas reached for the phone, his gaze fixed on Samantha's motionless figure sprawled on the floor. Jenny knelt beside her mother, softly shaking her shoulders, pleading for her to awaken. The operator was taken aback by the urgency in Lucas's voice as he answered the call. "I require an ambulance immediately," he stated, urgency eclipsing his typical icy composure. "An unconscious woman is present, her breathing faint. Kindly expedite your actions." In a mere 10 minutes, which seemed to stretch into eternity, the wail of sirens started to reverberate through the cramped street. Lucas dashed outside, gesturing wildly to direct the paramedics in. His polished shoes sank into the mud, yet for the first time, he felt completely indifferent to his appearance. "Come quickly," he urged, his voice trembling with worry. "She appears to be unwell." The paramedics hurried into the confined space, their movements deliberate as they brought in their medical equipment and stretcher. They rushed into action, skillfully assessing Samantha's vitals, as Jenny held tightly to her mother's hand, unwilling to release her grip until a medic softly ushered her away. One of them announced that blood pressure was alarmingly low, as they began to connect the monitoring equipment. "It's imperative that we relocate her immediately." Without hesitation, Lucas moved ahead and cradled Samantha in his embrace. Hours earlier, his Italian suit exuded an air of command. Now, it was drenched with her icy perspiration as he gently placed her onto the stretcher. "We are accompanying her," he stated resolutely, allowing for no dissent. "The girl is her child." Shortly thereafter, the piercing cry of the ambulance siren reverberated through the urban landscape. Inside, paramedics moved with a sense of urgency around Samantha's motionless body, as Jenny grasped her hand firmly, silent tears cascading down her smeared cheeks. Across from her, Lucas sat with a palpable tension, his fingers clutching his knees so tightly that his knuckles turned a stark white. "Please, don't leave me," Jenny cried, her voice trembling with desperation. "I promise I won't ever take anything again. Please, stay with me." The stretcher raced through the hospital corridors, Jenny limping behind, focused on keeping up, unaware of her own wounded knee. Lucas trailed closely, his once pristine suit now rumpled and marred by Samantha's blood. "Weak pulse, pressures dropping," one of the doctors exclaimed, propelling the stretcher forward with intense urgency. "Immediate access is essential." The emergency room doors closed behind them, sealing Jenny and Lucas in the dimly lit hallway. Jenny beat her tiny fists against the doors, a muffled cry slipping from her lips. Without fully grasping the reason, Lucas gently rested his hands on her trembling shoulders, preventing her from inflicting more pain on her already bruised hands. "They will exert every effort possible," he whispered, his tone surprisingly soft. "It's important to stay resilient, all right?" The hours unfolded in the stark, silent hospital corridor. Jenny sat huddled in one of the waiting room chairs, her eyes glistening with tears as she fixated on the doors her mother had disappeared through. Lucas wandered back and forth, his cell phone neglected in the pocket of his coat, which bore the signs of wear and dirt. The rhythmic sound of his polished shoes striking the floor resonated through the vacant hallway, each step a solemn reminder of the passage of time. "If she dies, because of me," he pondered, running a hand through his graying hair. "How can I possibly find a way to forgive myself?" A nurse came forward with a first aid kit, kindly urging Jenny to let her clean and bandage her knee. Jenny hardly noticed the sharpness as the nurse attended to her. Her thoughts were completely consumed by her mother. Lucas observed, a pang of guilt knotting within him as he caught sight of her scraped knee, a stark reminder of the pain she endured during their escape. He scolded himself for not having trusted her from the beginning. How much time did I squander, consumed by vengeance? The unexpected creak of the doors jolted them from their reverie. A physician entered, his demeanor grave as he drew near. Jenny sprang up, nearly losing her balance, her petite figure quaking with apprehension. Without thinking, Lucas moved closer, positioning himself next to her, as though to protect her from the unfolding news. "How is she doing?" they inquired in unison, their tones imbued with a collective apprehension. The physician cast a quick look between the young girl and the disheveled businessman, momentarily noting the unusual combination before swiftly redirecting his attention, keeping his demeanor steady. "We've stabilized her," he began, his voice calm yet measured, "but her condition is still critical." Jenny grasped Lucas's coat tightly, her legs trembling and unsteady. Without hesitation, Lucas rested a hand on her shoulder, providing a calm and reassuring presence. The physician persisted with a barrage of medical jargon that appeared to swirl around Jenny's mind. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Simply share it with me. Is she going to succeed?" A heavy stillness enveloped the room as the doctor paused, weighing his words with precision. Lucas sensed Jenny quivering beneath his touch, and a deep longing surged within him. "The upcoming hours will be vital," the doctor finally responded. "We are putting forth our utmost effort." The room was a flurry of activity, with nurses and doctors constantly entering and exiting, transporting equipment and supplies. Jenny remained steadfast, her eyes following their every move, determined not to take a seat once more. Lucas had relaxed his tie, abandoning the effort to uphold his typically immaculate appearance. He suddenly inquired about the cost of transferring her to a private room. The finest option at hand, the doctor paused, shifting his gaze between the two before responding. His expression deepened with gravity as he meticulously unfolded the particulars. The figures he cited made Jenny feel lightheaded, while Lucas simply nodded, his hand already moving towards his phone. "Take care of everything that needs to be addressed," he commanded with a professional demeanor. "Financial concerns are not a factor." The following hours passed in a whirlwind of beeping machines and doctors darting about the room with purpose. Jenny stood frozen, her eyes filled with dread, as Lucas swiftly made calls, leveraging his network to ensure Samantha received the finest care possible. He commanded attention, slicing through bureaucracy effortlessly. He whispered to himself between calls, hoping she would succeed. "This weighs heavily on my mind." At long last, after what seemed like an eternity, the head physician came back to provide them with an update. He appeared exhausted after countless hours of focused effort. Jenny approached him as if in a dream, her legs feeling almost weightless beneath her. Lucas lingered next to her, his fingers instinctively clutching her tiny, dirt-streaked hand. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please assure me that she will be all right." The physician let out a weary breath, fidgeting with his spectacles. His gaze lingered on Jenny, imbued with a tenderness that caused a tightness in Lucas's chest. "We've successfully stabilized her," he stated cautiously, "but I must be honest with you." He hesitated, carefully selecting his phrases. "The postponement of treatment," he went on, his voice wavering, "has resulted in serious complications." Jenny's hold on Lucas's hand grew firmer as the doctor detailed the gravity of her condition. Each word struck Lucas like a blow, a stark reminder of the invaluable moments squandered, pursuing a frantic child through the alleys. The physician discussed the potential for organ damage, complications, and diminished odds of recovery, yet all Lucas could concentrate on were Jenny's quiet sobs next to him and the weight of his own guilt. "The time we squandered today," he reflected with a heavy heart, "might have taken her life." The sudden arrival of a police officer in the hallway abruptly interrupted their serious discussion, creating a stir in the waiting area. His footsteps reverberated on the gleaming hospital floor as his gaze swept over each face in the waiting area. It was Lucas who first caught sight of him. A shiver coursed through him as he recognized the officer's piercing stare fixated on Jenny. The weary, anxious girl was oblivious to the looming presence of authority. Not now, he mused, standing up, not when everything feels so heavy already. The officer advanced with the assuredness of an individual who had pinpointed his objective. The sharpness of his pristine uniform stood in stark contrast to Jenny's untidy attire as she sat, tightly gripping the medicine she had just collected for her mother. "Jenny Harper," the officer announced, his voice echoing through the stillness of the hallway. With an instinctual move, Lucas stepped in front of the officer, his body coiled with tension as he shielded Jenny. Years of challenging discussions had instilled in him a sense of composure amidst tension, yet a subtle tremor in his voice revealed a trace of discomfort. "Officer, this young girl is experiencing a particularly sensitive moment," he remarked, his voice calm and measured. "Her mother is in critical condition." The officer merely shook his head, remaining unmoved by Lucas's desperate appeal. He retrieved a piece of paper from his pocket and passed it to Lucas, whose hands quivered ever so slightly as he accepted it. An arrest warrant had been issued, detailing a series of minor thefts occurring in the vicinity. "Apologies, sir," the officer stated, his voice cool and matter-of-fact. "However, she has a past. This time, we must take a stand. We've been on the lookout for her, and when we heard about a girl without a home at the hospital, we knew we had to investigate." Jenny appeared to withdraw into her chair, her anxious gaze flitting between the officer and the doors that led to the emergency room, where her mother was battling for her life. Tears she had been suppressing began to cascade down her grime-streaked visage. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My mother requires my presence here." Lucas exhausted all options, suggesting he could post bail and even vowing to take full responsibility for Jenny, yet the officer remained unmoved. Every one of his pleas was met with icy, formulaic replies that failed to recognize the urgency of the situation. The officer declared firmly, his hand moving toward the handcuffs, "I can't overlook the law. Even for an individual in your role." The sharp metallic sound of the cuffs releasing stirred something profound within Jenny. She leaped to her feet, her petite hands clutching Lucas's arm with a surprising strength. "Please, don't let them take me," she pleaded, her voice quivering with terror. "I must find out if she is okay. Mother, I must remain here with her." Chaos erupted in the hospital corridor. Jenny fought against the officer's attempts to restrain her, her desperate cries echoing through the corridor. Lucas's voice escalated with fury, his usually composed demeanor twisted in exasperation. "She's merely a frightened child," he exclaimed, capturing the attention of nearby nurses and patients. "Where has your empathy gone?" In the midst of the chaos, a sharp sound cut through the atmosphere as a monitor alarm erupted from the emergency room. The doors swung wide as a medical team stormed in, voices raised, urgency echoing down the corridor. Jenny's complexion drained of color as she realized the significance of the room number. "Mother!" She let out a piercing scream, her heart racing as she fought to escape. "No, please allow me to leave, she requires my presence." Lucas felt a tightness in his chest as he observed her fight against the overwhelming tide of her sorrow. The officer grasped her firmly, yet a fleeting shadow of uncertainty crossed his expression. More medical personnel rushed toward the emergency room, carrying equipment, their voices filled with urgency. "Is this truly your responsibility?" Lucas snapped, a harsh edge to his voice, restraining a child as her mother lay dying. The tumult in the hallway appeared to escalate. Nurses rushed by with medical cards in hand, doctors urgently requested additional medication, and Jenny was tugged toward the exit, her cries becoming increasingly desperate. Lucas glanced anxiously between the emergency room and Jenny being taken away, a deep sense of despair washing over him. How had it reached this point, he pondered. The large handcuffs constricted Jenny's slender wrists, giving them an appearance of being trapped, while her tear-streaked face and scraped knees revealed the depth of her desperation. "Hold on," Lucas attempted to express once again. Let her remain here until we find out more about her mother. Yet, the blaring siren from the emergency room overshadowed his voice. A doctor stepped out of the room, issuing commands to initiate the transfer for Jenny's mother. His language was precise, yet the intensity in his voice highlighted the importance of the circumstances at hand. Jenny grasped snippets of information: cardiac arrest, unstable condition, risk of death, as she was drawn further down the corridor. "No," she cried out with every ounce of her being, "please let me remain by her side." Lucas remained frozen, his heart sinking as he witnessed Jenny's desperate cries diminish while she was escorted to the police vehicle. Simultaneously, Samantha's stretcher sped toward an ambulance, the monitors emitting urgent beeps while doctors called out commands. "What have I done?" Lucas pondered, as the burden of his remorse intensified. If only he had placed his trust in her earlier. The final vision of Jenny lingered in his mind, her face marked by tears pressed against the glass of the police car, hands restrained, as she watched the ambulance take her mother away in the opposite direction. The haunting wails of sirens intertwined with her cries, a melody Lucas realized he would never be free from. He vowed to make this right, his voice a mere whisper, even if it meant it would be the last thing he ever did. The private hospital stood in sharp relief against the tumultuous emergency room they had just left behind. Shiny floors and well-lit corridors took the place of the chaotic energy of the public hospital, yet the weight of tension lingered just as strongly. Through the glass of the ICU, Lucas observed the medical team battling to save Samantha's life. The unpredictable beeping of the monitors echoed the frantic tempo of his racing heart. "I can't let her die," he murmured, running a hand through his graying hair. "Not after pulling her away from her daughter." Time felt elongated as medical staff came and went, their expressions somber. Lucas's typical sharp, businesslike demeanor had vanished. His once pristine suit was now creased and marked, his tie lost in the chaos, and fatigue etched into his gaze. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from the office, yet he chose to disregard each one. Agreements? At this moment, he let out a derisive laugh, rejecting yet another call. A life hangs in the balance. A lead physician stepped forward, clutching a pile of results, his eyes reflecting a weighty silence. The words emerged with deliberation, each one weighed thoughtfully, yet Lucas grasped the meaning hidden within the silences. They found themselves with dwindling choices. "We require an individual capable of transforming this situation," he interjected, not allowing the doctor to complete his thought. "Who is the leading expert in the nation for this?" His fingers trembled as he punched in the digits, reaching out for conversations he never imagined he would initiate. His name opened doors, his resources dismantled obstacles, yet with every urgent call, he sensed the minutes fading fast. He reiterated with unwavering conviction, regardless of the price, during each discussion. "Obtain them immediately." Lucas's attention was entirely captured by the rhythmic, disquieting sounds of Samantha's monitors, each erratic beep resonating with the urgency of the situation. He pondered how utterly meaningless money seemed as yet another bank transfer went through. What is the purpose of all this power if I am unable to save a life? The specialist's arrival sent a wave of unease throughout the hospital floor. Renowned for his skill, he encountered a blend of admiration and apprehension from the usual team as he examined Samantha's case with a discerning perspective. Positioned by the ICU entrance, Lucas flicked his eyes between Samantha's wan visage and the physician, attempting to decipher the nuances of his expressions with each fresh test outcome. "She must persevere," he reminded himself. "I must deliver some wonderful news to Jenny." The following hours progressed in an unyielding series of targeted examinations and therapies. The expert focused intently, requesting tests that Lucas had never encountered before. Every outcome was examined with meticulous attention, ensuring that every nuance was accounted for. "Something eludes our understanding," the doctor whispered softly, more to his own thoughts than to anyone present. Lucas observed intently, scrutinizing each delicate movement and every fleeting expression, eager to glean any insight into Samantha's state. The other doctors, equally on edge, observed the situation, their expressions reflecting the gravity of the circumstances. The machines produced a haunting melody, signaling the relentless march of time. "How much longer do we have to endure this wait?" Lucas inquired, his tone revealing his discomfort. "Is there something we can take action on?" he insisted. The expert raised his gaze from the findings, a look of worry crossing his features that struck Lucas deeply. Clutching the quivering sheets, he approached, his usually unwavering gaze now clouded with an unsettling aura. "After 3 decades of experience," he started, his voice measured and composed, "I have yet to encounter a symptom pattern quite like this." A shiver coursed through Lucas. His extensive experience in negotiations had honed his ability to read people, and the specialist's tense posture was profoundly concerning. The physician pressed on, selecting his language with care, every statement resonating profoundly. He revealed an unforeseen complication, presenting the test results. "It's an aspect that the standard protocols overlooked." The hospital hallway seemed to be enveloped by an unanticipated chill. Lucas pressed his back against the wall, his legs wobbling as the doctor's words settled heavily on him. Other staff members assembled, creating a charged semicircle around the specialist. "What is the duration?" Lucas succeeded in asking, his voice feeling odd even to his own ears. "What is her time frame?" The specialist adjusted his glasses, the movement seeming more like a delay than a genuine necessity. He perused the charts once more, as if seeking a new revelation hidden within the pages. "It's not merely about time," he finally stated, his voice imbued with a weight that suggested a deeper concern. "It's about the challenges we face." The monitors in the background emitted a constant, soulless beep, serving as a stark reminder of the delicate life hanging in the balance. Lucas approached the ICU's glass window, his gaze fixed on Megan's pale face, strikingly reminiscent of his daughter's. The expert accompanied him, their presence laden with a wealth of experience and unvoiced worries. "Mr. Warburton," he commenced, his voice calm but resolute. "What we've discovered here is truly unprecedented in my experience." Lucas pivoted deliberately, locking eyes with the doctor's intense expression. The hospital hallway seemed to stand still, each moment dragging on excruciatingly as he waited for some clarity. The expert clutched the medical files as if they were a ticking time bomb, his facade of professionalism betraying a deeper, more disquieting truth. "Just tell me," Lucas said, his voice quivering. "What did you discover?" As Jenny was escorted through the police station's frigid, reverberating corridors, her delicate wrists were confined in handcuffs. Tears had evaporated from her face, leaving faint traces on her weary cheeks, yet her eyes still flickered with a glimmer of desperation. The officers led her onward, unfazed by her trembling voice and her desperate pleas. "Please," she rasped, her throat raw from weeping. "Could someone please make a call to the hospital? I seek to understand more about my mother." The booking process was an excruciating ordeal. Every question posed, every photograph captured, and every fingerprint gathered felt like moments fading from her mother's presence. The unforgiving fluorescent lights caused her eyes to burn, yet they paled in comparison to the tears she fought to suppress. With a soft voice, she beckoned to each officer that walked by. "I simply want to find out if she is all right." The cell felt cramped and frigid, featuring a stark concrete bench pressed against the wall and a minuscule barred window high above, barely letting in any light. The resounding thud of the door closing echoed like a final verdict, marking the end of her choices. In the dim light, Jenny huddled in the corner, her wrists still bound, trembling hands clutching her knees with a desperate grip. "Mother. Please hang on," she whispered into the silence, her voice laced with desperation. "Simply endure for a bit more time." The minutes elongated tortuously, each second crawling by as if it were an endless span of time. Each time footsteps resonated through the corridor, Jenny would dart to the bars, her eyes igniting with a fresh spark of hope. Yet, every time, the officers walked by her cell, offering not even a fleeting look. Some averted their gaze, while others chose to disregard her completely. "I only want to know if she's all right," she'd implore, her voice fading with every desperate request. Could someone please share their thoughts? Fatigue weighed heavily upon her, but she fought against the pull of slumber. Each time her eyelids fluttered shut, the haunting image of her mother sprawled motionless on the floor invaded her mind, the pallor of her face stark against the familiar surroundings. The clinking of her cuffs against the bars as she moved uneasily served as a perpetual reminder of her vulnerability. The tormenting idea lingered in her mind. What if she leaves and I'm not around? In the hospital, Lucas hung on the doctor's every word, his complexion growing increasingly ashen with each new piece of information. Samantha's situation proved to be more intricate than they had expected, a unique combination of elements that rendered standard treatments ineffective. The physician gestured toward the disarrayed test results, revealing peculiar patterns that only he appeared to comprehend completely. "There could be a possibility," he remarked with caution, "but I must be honest about the potential dangers." Positioned outside the ICU, Lucas's gaze remained fixed on Samantha beyond the glass while the specialist detailed her extraordinary situation. The persistent drone of the monitors and sporadic beeps only intensified his anxiety. The test results in the doctor's hands unveiled a mysterious illness, one that spread in an unprecedented manner, assaulting her body with an erratic ferocity. The doctor spoke solemnly, noting that it seemed each organ was responding in its own unique way. The standard approaches fall short. As Lucas rubbed his weary face, his thoughts flickered between the sight of Samantha, motionless and unresponsive, and the chilling recollection of Jenny being taken away in handcuffs. The physician started outlining a possibility, an innovative experimental therapy, just emerging from the trial stage and appropriate for critical situations like Samantha's. "There's a chance," he stated thoughtfully, "but I must be completely transparent about the risks at play." The procedure was revolutionary, yet every remark from the expert was tinged with uncertainty. Previous results were limited, and this type of intervention had not been attempted on a case as advanced as Samantha's. The doctor cautioned, indicating the monitors, that her body was in a state of severe weakness. The procedure may indeed have fatal consequences. Lucas moved nearer to the observation window, his eyes fixed on Samantha's pale face, strikingly similar to that of his daughter. The intricate machines and tubes supporting her appeared far too fragile for the battle that awaited. "And if we take no action?" he inquired, his voice trembling slightly, fearing the response. "What is her time frame?" The expert positioned himself next to him, gazing at Samantha with a similarly grave focus. His expression spoke volumes even before he uttered a word. "Without urgent intervention, she won't survive the week," he said, his words piercing through to the core of the issue. "All vital organs are beginning to fail." Lucas observed the delicate flickers of the heart monitors on the screen, each pulse representing a tenuous connection to life. The expert detailed the workings of the experimental procedure, a demanding journey that would push Samantha's body to its limits like never before. "If she makes it through the first hurdle," he remarked, his voice laden with apprehension, "we'll still have to determine if her body reacts positively." Lucas shut his eyes for a moment, sensing the gravity of the choice pressing down on him. The sight of Jenny weeping in the rear of the police vehicle lingered in his thoughts. He realized he could no longer delay, with guilt eating away at him. Still, the unease remained. What if the procedure didn't go as planned? The expert detected his uncertainty and moved closer, speaking in a softer tone. "Mr. Warburton, it is essential for you to grasp that, even if she manages to pull through, the likelihood of her achieving a full recovery is quite low." He paused, selecting his words with great care, acknowledging that the process will be intensely painful for her. Lucas opened his eyes, locking onto the specialist's gaze with a fierce intensity that caused the man to take a small step back. The choice was harsh. Face the peril of a treatment that might take her life, or witness her gradual and helpless decline. "And if she doesn't make it through the procedure?" he inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do I break the news to Jenny that her mother passed away while we were trying to save her?" The expert remained silent. The persistent beeping of the machines and the gentle hum of the ventilators punctuated the stillness in the ICU. Samantha pressed on in her quiet struggle, oblivious to the devastating decisions being taken regarding her future. The doctor finally spoke, his voice laden with the weight of accumulated experience. If we don't pursue the treatment, her life is at stake. Should we proceed, there's a possibility she could survive, even though the risk remains. Lucas locked eyes with the specialist, his expression intense and resolute. Proceed with the treatment. Take every necessary step. Utilize all available resources, he instructed, as he began to grab his phone. I will go fetch her daughter. She must be present just in case. His voice faded, allowing the stark truth to linger in silence. The journey to the police station seemed to stretch on endlessly. Every moment in traffic felt excruciatingly long as his thoughts oscillated between worry for Samantha and remorse for letting Jenny be taken away in handcuffs. The unexpected strain in his usually composed boss drew the driver's eye as he glanced into the rearview mirror. How did I allow this to escalate? He whispered softly, adjusting his slightly askew tie. How on earth did I overlook this? The police station stood before me, an uninviting and formidable structure. Lucas strode in with intent, his aura and renown creating a path that would typically remain shut. I'm here to secure Jenny's release. She was brought in earlier, he declared, his voice resonating through the hallway with commanding presence. I require her departure at once. Her mother is in critical condition, and she must get to the hospital immediately. I will take care of her bail. Jenny crouched in the corner of her cell, her heart racing as she heard footsteps drawing near. Her wrists, still restrained, throbbed with pain and were marked by bruises from her desperate attempts to break free, while her face showed remnants of tears long dried. Her gaze lifted as Lucas entered, a blend of astonishment and anticipation dancing in her eyes. My mother started, her voice trembling with emotion. She's alive, Lucas responded swiftly, his gaze drawn to the bruises marring her fragile wrists. I will lead you to her. The journey to the hospital was steeped in a heavy silence, punctuated solely by the soft, intermittent sobs of Jenny. Lucas caught a glimpse of her from the periphery, taking in her petite and fragile form as she settled into his leather seat. He spoke softly, offering her a sense of comfort with the news of a new treatment. The medical team is exhausting all options available. The ICU exuded a serene atmosphere upon their arrival, with only the rhythmic beeping of the monitors punctuating the stillness. Jenny dashed to the window, her small hands pressing against the chilly glass. With a wave of his hand, Lucas signaled to the nurses, who promptly granted him and Jenny entry. The nurses assisted in their preparation, equipping them with masks, caps, and sterile gowns. Just a few minutes, one nurse warned, she's extremely fragile. As Jenny approached the bed, it was a vision that left him utterly speechless. Samantha, aware of her daughter's presence, started to move her fingers gently. With determination, her eyes fluttered open, slowly honing in on Jenny's visage. My sweet pea, she murmured, her voice a fragile whisper beneath the oxygen mask. You returned. Jenny softly grasped her mother's hand, treating it with the utmost care. She struggled to maintain a smile while tears streamed down her cheeks. Mother, this is Mr. Lucas, she remarked, gesturing toward the businessman positioned by the entrance. He covered the hospital expenses, as well as the cost of the medicine. He is assisting us. Samantha gradually shifted her head, her eyes locking onto Lucas's. Within her gaze, he perceived a profound comprehension, an unspoken invitation, that pulled at his heartstrings. I hope you can look after her, I'm uncertain. Her voice was barely audible, each word a challenge to articulate. I'm uncertain about how much time remains for me. She is all alone, I beg you. Lucas moved in, his typically serious expression lightened by the weight of the moment. Samantha grasped Jenny's hand gently, her gaze unwaveringly fixed on his. Promise, she murmured, her voice trailing off into silence. Swear to me that you'll keep my precious daughter safe." The monitors started to waver, the figures on the display dancing in a disconcerting manner. Samantha's breath became shallow, her eyelids heavy with fatigue. "Stay strong," she whispered to Jenny, summoning her final reserves of strength. "Mom cherishes you above all else." Jenny bent down close to her mother, her tears cascading onto Samantha's wan visage. Lucas rested a soft hand on the girl's shoulder, his voice calm yet filled with feeling. "I promise," he said with a serious tone, "I'll take care of her as if she were my own." Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared throughout the room. The figures on the displays began to plummet rapidly, as crimson lights flickered across the machinery. Samantha's hold on Jenny's hand slackened. "Mom," Jenny cried, her voice trembling with fear. "Mom, please, stay with me." Lucas managed to grasp her just in time as the medical team burst through the door. The sirens wailed with increasing intensity, while commands echoed through the chaos, demanding resources urgently. Jenny's final sight of her mother was her face, disappearing behind a flurry of white coats as the room erupted into a measured chaos, getting Samantha ready for emergency surgery. Lucas and Jenny entered the waiting room, where time seemed to stretch endlessly with each passing second. Jenny trembled uncontrollably, her eyes locked onto the doors her mother had just vanished behind. "She will succeed, won't she?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she grasped at Lucas's sleeves. "She must persevere." Lucas endeavored to maintain his composure for Jenny, even as he faced his own challenges. With each swing of the double doors and the passage of a medical staff member, his heart quickened in anticipation. The entrepreneur, typically so self-assured and poised, now found himself at a loss for words, gripping the trembling girl's hand with a sense of urgency. "She's just as resilient as you," he whispered, his voice thick with feeling, "and she's being cared for by the finest." Time dragged on, each moment more challenging than the one before. Jenny stood her ground by the door, convinced that remaining there might somehow aid her mother. After enduring such a lengthy period on her feet, her legs trembled, and Lucas kindly assisted her into a chair. "You should take a moment to rest," he said gently. "Your mother will rely on your strength while she's away." As he observed Jenny finally drift into sleep in an awkward posture, worn out from the day's happenings, Lucas's coffee from the vending machine remained untouched. Even in slumber, her expression bore a burden that no child ought to bear. How could life change so profoundly in just one day, he pondered, as he gently placed his jacket over her delicate shoulders. "Once I was in pursuit of her, and now I am her only support." A physician emerged from the double doors, a surgical mask concealing his features. With a sudden leap, Lucas startled Jenny from her slumber. The doctor approached them, his gloves stained with blood, causing their stomachs to churn. "The surgery is turning out to be more difficult than we expected," he remarked with a somber tone. Time dragged endlessly, with each passing moment feeling increasingly intolerable. Jenny's quiet sobs soaked Lucas's jacket, which remained gently resting on her shoulders. The businessman knelt before her, his hands quivering slightly as he grasped hers, seeking words of solace that eluded him. "Recall the words your mother often shared," he murmured gently. "It's important to maintain your strength at this moment." The nurses visited often, providing updates that appeared to heighten the anxiety instead of alleviating it. With every creak of the doors, Jenny straightened in her seat, her red, swollen eyes scanning the room, yearning for a glimmer of hope. Lucas moved restlessly along the hall, then settled next to her, each trapped in their own spirals of concern. "What's causing the delay?" she inquired once more, as if it were the 10th time. "There seems to be an issue." The wall clock appeared to mock them, its hands inching forward at an agonizingly sluggish rate. Lucas had long abandoned any pretense of productivity, his gaze unwaveringly locked on the doors of the surgical center. Jenny finally drifted back to sleep, her head leaning against his shoulder, her small body trembling softly with silent sobs even in her dreams. "If there is a higher power," he mused, gazing at the stark white hospital ceiling, please spare this little girl from losing her mother." In an instant, the sound of hurried footsteps caught them off guard. Frantic voices echoed through the corridor as medical staff rushed past, urgently requesting additional supplies. Lucas felt a heavy weight in his chest as he observed the anxious expressions of the team hurrying back into the operating room. "What's going on?" Jenny inquired, a tremor of anxiety lacing her tone. "What is prompting their haste?" The expert rushed through the double doors, his voice reverberating as he spoke to a fellow physician. "Additional blood units are required." At this moment, Jenny grasped his hand with such intensity that her delicate nails etched marks into his skin. "Blood," she murmured, her voice trembling. "What is the reason for her needing blood?" Time slipped away in a whirlwind of motion. Medical professionals rushed through the space, their faces etched with urgency and concern. Lucas lost count of the number of blood bags that were hurriedly brought into the surgical room. With her head nestled against his arm, Jenny observed every motion, trepidation evident in her gaze. She whispered, "I've never encountered so many doctors before. Is that favorable or unfavorable?" And then, in an instant, all was hushed. The hurried rhythm ceased, sounds diminished, and for a brief instant, an unsettling tranquility enveloped the corridor. Lucas sensed a shiver run down his spine as he observed the hospital staff sharing anxious looks. Something felt off, he mused, his pulse racing. This silence felt anything but ordinary. In an instant, Jenny rose to her feet, her eyes puffy from a torrent of tears, fixated on the surgical unit doors with an unwavering determination. Lucas stood up as well, instinctively resting a comforting hand on her shoulder. "She's going to be okay," he said, clinging to the hope that his own words would ring true. "Your mother is resilient, she can handle this." Finally, the specialist stepped through the double doors, peeling off his surgical mask with a deliberate slowness that felt ominous. The weariness etched on his face was clear, yet beneath it lay an unsettling presence that caused Lucas's stomach to churn. Jenny stepped ahead, but he restrained her, observing the grave expression on the doctor's face. "Mr. Warburton," the doctor started, his tone laden with weight. "It's time for a conversation." The expert led Lucas a short distance from Jenny, who remained seated, gripping his coat as if it were her only means of survival. The corridor of the hospital fell into a hushed stillness, with only the soft hum of fluorescent lights disrupting the calm. The physician adjusted his spectacles, appearing as if the countless hours in the operating room had taken a toll on him. "Mr. Warburton, there's something vital I must share with you," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A procedure exists that could potentially save her, yet it carries significant risks. We would need to lower her body temperature to an exact level, and then briefly halt her heart." Lucas sensed his legs growing unsteady, prompting him to lean against the wall for stability. "Cease her heartbeat? What if it doesn't start beating again?" The doctor spoke with careful clarity, emphasizing the need for complete transparency. "This is an unprecedented endeavor in this place. Indeed, it has been recorded on just 3 occasions throughout the nation. If we miscalculate during the heart stoppage, if we lose any critical seconds, we may lose her permanently," the doctor explained, his face marked by concern. Lucas cast a look over his shoulder at Jenny, who stood apart, her eyes betraying a palpable fear. She appeared diminutive and delicate, clutching his coat as if it were her sole lifeline in the starkness of the hospital corridor. "What is the time frame for making our decision?" Lucas inquired, his fingers sifting through his salt and pepper locks. The specialist stated, his tone grave, that it would only take a few minutes at most. "Her condition is deteriorating rapidly. If we are to move forward, it must be at this moment." Jenny inched nearer to Lucas, her fingers anxiously fidgeting with the hem of her worn t-shirt. He noticed her lips quivering, a silent battle against the tide of her emotions. Her red, tear-streaked eyes were fixed on the doctor, who was engrossed in a discussion about the forthcoming procedure. Her delicate hands trembled as she clutched Lucas' arm. "She is not meant to perish, Mr. Lucas. Her voice trembled, heavy with emotion. She is my sole remaining connection in this life. Despite her illness, she continued to care for me, even though it caused her pain. Lucas observed her struggle to contain the tears, her petite figure trembling as she endeavored to maintain her composure. "We're putting forth our utmost effort, Jenny," he assured her. But Jenny shook her head, her grip growing firmer. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "She has consistently demonstrated remarkable strength. Even on the days when movement felt like a distant dream, she would wear a smile and assure me that all was well." Yet, the anguish was evident. The struggle she faced each day was immense. Her voice softened, trembling beneath the gravity of the moment. "Now she's inside by herself, and I'm just here, waiting. I am unable to assist her." The expert took a brief pause before coming back with a pile of papers. Jenny's gaze shifted toward him, brimming with urgency. "I implore you, you must help my mother. She is my everything." Her eyes found Lucas once more, filled with a silent plea. "Promise you'll allow them to explore all possibilities. Will you promise to stand by her side? I hope my mom finds her way to recovery soon. You have no idea what she's endured." Her voice trembled as she pressed on, her words tumbling forth in quick, uneven breaths. "The night brought the greatest challenges. She believed I was oblivious, but I was fully aware. She would weep in the bathroom, yet return with a smile, declaring, 'It's nothing, dear. Just a tiny speck in mother's gaze.'" Lucas sensed the gravity of her words pressing down on him. With each passing moment, the decision loomed larger and more intimidating. The expert lingered, papers clutched tightly, biding their time with quiet anticipation. Yet Jenny continued to speak, as if clinging to these recollections might somehow ensure her mother remained by her side. "My mother always claimed I had her strength," her voice soft as she focused on the papers the doctor held. "However, I lack strength, Mr. Lucas. I feel a deep sense of fear." "At times, fear grips us all," Lucas said softly, extending his hand toward the pen. "Even the strongest individuals, like your mom." With a deep breath, he signed the paper. "If this is Samantha's sole opportunity, I must give her and Jenny the chance to fight for it." Shortly thereafter, the medical team was swiftly navigating the operating room with a sense of determined purpose. Through the glass, the monitors revealed Samantha's vital signs, each beep fading into a softer echo than the one before. "The cooling process has begun," the specialist announced, his voice resonating throughout the space. "The temperature stands at 43 degrees and continues to fall," the doctor observed while examining the instruments. "We must lower the temperature to 39 degrees before initiating the controlled cardiac arrest." "Temperature reached," a nurse announced, initiating the cardiac arrest procedure in 3, but before she could complete her sentence, a sharp, continuous tone sliced through the atmosphere. The screens began to flicker, crimson lights illuminating Jenny's terrified expression. "No ma'am, just a moment," a nurse has called, her gaze fixed on the heart rate monitor. "Not at this moment, thank you. This isn't the way." The operating room transformed into a whirlwind of purposeful activity as the team sprang into action, the cardiac monitor emitting its relentless sound. Samantha's heart had ceased to beat on its own. In that moment, Jenny held on to Lucas's hand with a firm grip in the hallway. Her eyes remained locked on the operating room doors, a disquieting sensation growing within her. "Why do I sense that? Mommy isn't coming back, Lucas. I can't imagine my life without her," she murmured softly. Lucas sensed the delicate quiver of her small hand. He longed to soothe her, to offer words of solace, yet he understood the peril of igniting a hope that could easily be dashed. "I will remain by your side, come what may," he murmured gently. "Let us cling to hope. We must hold on to hope." He tried to comfort her, but the piercing, incessant beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the hallway as Lucas restrained Jenny, preventing her from pounding on the operating room window. A nurse swiftly drew the blinds, enveloping them in a cocoon of muted voices from the medical team and that dreadful, relentless noise. "Please, let me see her," Jenny cried, struggling against Lucas's hold with every ounce of strength she could muster. "It's important for her to feel my presence beside her." The hospital corridor, typically a sanctuary of calm and structure, had spiraled into a meticulously managed turmoil. Nurses hurried past with emergency carts, the wheels shrieking against the gleaming floor. Doctors were swiftly summoned via the intercom, their voices echoing through the empty corridors. From beyond the barriers, the expert's voice, somewhat subdued, issued commands. As the defibrillator sprang into action, Jenny trembled, gripping Lucas firmly as if he could protect her from the harsh truth unfolding around them. "I can't bear to listen to that," she cried, shielding her ears. "I can't bear the thought of them causing her pain," she murmured, her eyes brimming with tears. "They're not causing her any harm," Lucas responded, though his voice quivered. "They are making efforts to return her to you." A nurse rushed from the room, balancing a tray brimming with syringes and medication vials. She averted her gaze from Jenny, hurrying down the hall. Shortly thereafter, another nurse arrived, carrying bags of blood. The sound of machinery and hurried conversations filtered through the slightly ajar door. "Adrenaline, now," the specialist commanded. Snapshots of ampoules and the meticulous preparation of syringes punctuated the atmosphere with a sense of urgency. "What was the reason for closing the door?" Jenny inquired, her fingers gripping Lucas's arm tightly. "What if this is the final moment I have with her?" "What if—" "Don't speak that way," Lucas interjected, his voice faltering. "Don't forget how strong your mom is. She has consistently stood by your side, and her battle continues even now." He attempted to convey a sense of calm, even as he grappled with his own trepidation. The defibrillator emitted a sharp sound once more intense this time, causing Jenny to flinch and hide her face in Lucas's coat, stifling her cries. Lucas sensed her tears soaking into the fabric, yet, for once, the physical world faded into the background of his thoughts. With a sense of urgency, the doctor's voice cut through the air, commanding attention. A different nurse hurried out, soon coming back with additional equipment. With each passing second in the quiet corridor, it felt as though time had come to a halt. "Mommy," Jenny murmured between her tears, her voice a desperate call for comfort. "I beg you, stay with me. I assure you, I will improve. I assure you that I will avoid any trouble in the future. I promise to put in more effort, just, please stay." Her desperate words flowed freely as Lucas embraced her, their hearts pounding in unison. The defibrillator's shock resonated for a third time, making the hallway lights flicker ominously. Two young residents hurriedly pushed an emergency cart, their expressions mirroring Jenny's own fear. The expert's voice, rich with a wealth of experience, resonated throughout the room. "Final attempt." With an authoritative voice, the doctor declared, clear, and an intense stillness enveloped the room. Lucas struggled to manage his breathing, which came in rapid, shallow gasps. Jenny remained quiet, as though she feared that even the slightest sound could disturb this pivotal moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, a soft, irregular beep emerged. Initially, it felt so gentle that they nearly questioned its authenticity, yet it occurred once more, and then yet again. "A rhythm has emerged," the specialist remarked, his tone a blend of exhaustion and relief. "The heart rate is faint, yet steady. Let's maintain a vigilant eye." "Get the ICU ready," he commanded. Jenny sank to her knees, overwhelmed by a wave of relief, her legs giving way beneath her. Lucas managed to catch her, despite his own unsteady legs. A nurse approached, holding a small cup of water, her face reflecting a blend of relief and worry. "What's with the lack of smiles around here?" Jenny murmured, observing the taut, concentrated expressions of the medical team. "If she has returned, what is causing their continued concern?" The monitor persisted in its gentle beeping, a sound so subtle that all present leaned in to catch it. Through the partially shut blinds, Lucas observed the specialist darting about, commanding with a sense of urgency. "She has returned." "My mummy's back," Jenny whispered, her face streaked with tears. "Return with renewed strength. Your presence is incredibly important to me." Lucas embraced Jenny tightly, their attention drawn to the faint, erratic beeping of the cardiac monitor. The sound was delicate and invaluable, evoking the subtle boundary that exists between existence and absence. Beyond their realm, the hospital corridor gradually resumed its usual rhythm. Yet, for Lucas and Jenny, time stood still, marked only by the fragile, wavering beeps that encapsulated all they cherished. The specialist finally emerged from the operating room, appearing exhausted and pale, his blood-stained gown reminiscent of a grueling struggle. Despite the corridor's serene appearance, an undercurrent of tension hung in the air, rendering each breath a laborious task. After years of honing his craft, the expert's hands, typically so composed, quivered as he removed his moist mask. "Mr. Warburton," he shouted, his voice strained from the fervor of the resuscitation attempt. "There exists one last alternative, yet it's crucial for you to grasp the potential dangers that come with it. A research team in Sweden has been conducting tests on a new drug intended for situations like this. The early results are encouraging, indicating a 60% recovery rate among patients with advanced conditions." Lucas propelled himself ahead, his instincts honing in on this glimmer of possibility. "What is the price? Where might I find it?" He retrieved his phone from the pocket of his worn jacket, hardly aware of the quiver in his hands. "The situation is intricate," the physician remarked, releasing a breath as he surveyed the medical records on his device. "The medication remains in the third phase of clinical trials. It remains unapproved in nearly every country at this time. Attempting to bring it in through legal channels could result in a lengthy process, potentially spanning weeks or even months, due to the extensive paperwork required." He paused, weighing his words with precision. "What are the side effects? They might be quite intense." Jenny, who had been standing quietly in the shadows, grasped Lucas's sleeve tightly. Her eyes, glistening with tears, flickered back and forth between the two men. "Why are you speaking so quietly? Is it concerning my mother? I would appreciate it if you could share what is happening." Lucas knelt beside her, disregarding the fine fabric of his suit. "Listen, darling," he said, gently clasping her delicate hands. "A unique remedy could potentially benefit your mum. Acquiring it won't be a simple task. But I will achieve it, regardless of the obstacles." Rising once more, he quickly punched in a number on his phone. "Greetings, it's I. Don't forget about the favor you promised me regarding the mining case. I require your contact information for the Swiss embassy immediately." "Absolutely not, it requires immediate attention. This is a matter of utmost urgency." While he awaited the call transfer, he swiftly sent messages from his second phone, notifying contacts across the world. The doctor observed Lucas's desperate resolve, feeling both a sense of respect and concern. "Mr. Warburton," he made another attempt. "What are the side effects? There have been notable and intense responses. Rejection, anaphylaxis, and even the failure of multiple organs." During one trial, his voice trembled. The patient was unable to survive the initial dose. Lucas appeared completely unaware of the cautions, deeply engaged in his global connections, rapidly typing amidst conversations in English, Spanish, and French. In the meantime, he reached out to his team in Europe on his second line. "The cost doesn't matter," he said, his voice echoing through the corridor. "Initiate operations at the Geneva office. Ensure that someone is in that lab within 15 minutes. Utilize the corporate aircraft. I will do whatever it requires. This cannot be postponed until the morning." Jenny nestled into one of the hallway chairs, drawing her knees tightly against her chest. The soft, irregular beeping of her mother's heart monitor appeared to signify every fleeting moment left. "Just hold on," she whispered softly to herself. Just a little while longer, Mom. Amidst the flurry of calls, the specialist seized a fleeting opportunity to provide yet another cautionary reminder. Even if we manage to obtain the medication, there are important considerations you should keep in mind, he started. A series of pre-tests, compatibility checks, and meticulous preparation for the patient will be essential. Considerable dangers are present. However, Lucas interrupted before he could complete his thought. How much time does she have left without the medication? Lucas asked, wiping the sweat from his brow, his voice taut with anxiety. The physician reviewed her most recent test results, his expression grave. Her organs are deteriorating swiftly. Perhaps 3, or even 4 hours at most, yet we must recognize the potential danger. An allergic reaction may occur suddenly and can be life-threatening. A nurse approached, delivering additional test results to the specialists, each marked in bold red. Following a swift glance, his expression darkened further. Her condition is deteriorating more rapidly than we expected. The left kidney has ceased to respond, while the right one. I'm on it, Lucas interjected forcefully, interrupting the doctor. The laboratory consented to issue a dose. My pilot is set to depart from Geneva in 10 minutes, while James is finalizing the necessary regulatory approvals. The following 2 hours stretched on, a torturous span of time. Every 15 minutes, Lucas got the latest information on the plane's whereabouts. Jenny remained close to him, holding on to his arm as if he were her final connection to hope. Do you think it will arrive on time? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, tinged with apprehension. What if it doesn't succeed? What if? It will arrive, Lucas promised her, though he grappled with the certainty he wished to convey. I have connections with notable individuals in Europe. They are ensuring it happens. The expert, utilizing the waiting period, organized his team and arranged a room outfitted with all conceivable emergency equipment to ensure the medication could be administered safely. Jenny felt her anxiety intensify with each new monitor that emitted its beeps and clicks. Why do they require all this equipment? She inquired, tightening her grip on Lucas' hand. Could it truly be that perilous? Before anyone had a chance to reply, the sharp whir of blades sliced through the stillness. A helicopter descended onto the hospital's helipad, delivering its invaluable load. Lucas released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. The courier burst in moments later, panting, and delicately presented a refrigerated case holding the crucial dose that could save a life. The minuscule vial, scarcely larger than a thumb, appeared woefully inadequate to warrant the tremendous effort it had summoned. The specialist warned, preparing the medication, that this was the final opportunity to withdraw. As we embark on this journey. His voice faded into silence. Proceed, Lucas instructed, holding Jenny close. Without this, she will not survive. I understand the dangers involved, yet I am prepared to go to any lengths to ensure her survival, and I anticipate the same commitment from you. In the initial, charged moments after the injection, all eyes were fixed in hushed anticipation. Samantha's heartbeat, once weak and erratic, began to strengthen, and a delicate blush returned to her cheeks. It's coming together. The doctor exclaimed, astonished by the rapid onset of the drug's effects. Her heartbeat is growing more powerful. Yet, the sense of relief was fleeting, lasting just 43 seconds. In an instant, the monitors blared with deafening alarms. Samantha's face, once vibrant with emotion, began to flush with red blotches, spreading rapidly like wildfire. Her throat swelled noticeably, warping her features. The specialist exclaimed, severe allergic reaction. Administer adrenaline, corticosteroids, intubation, immediately, he commanded. Drawn by the commotion, Jenny hurried to the window of the surgery room, straining to catch a glimpse within. She emitted a desperate cry upon witnessing her mother's body convulse on the bed, as the monitor's alarms erupted in a cacophony that engulfed the room. Lucas encircled Jenny with his arms, preventing her from rushing into the room, his heart racing with fear. The blinds slammed down, plunging them into shadow, as the cacophony of alarms and urgent orders echoed around them. The medication intended to rescue Samantha now appeared to be transforming into her downfall. "Stop!" Jenny exclaimed, her small fists striking against Lucas's chest. "Create them. Cease. She is in pain. My mother is in pain," she pleaded. The expert advanced with a syringe of adrenaline, his actions deliberate amid the chaos. Samantha's body convulsed on the bed, the tubes and sensors straining against the force of each tremor. Her face and neck bore the marks of distress, angry red welts transforming her features into a haunting visage of allergic suffering. The medical team operated with a palpable sense of urgency, each member executing their role with the precise efficiency that only comes from years of experience. The nurse exclaimed urgently, her gaze fixed on the monitor as the oxygen levels dropped sharply. "Immediate intubation is essential, otherwise, we risk losing her." The expert moved with confidence, swiftly arranging the essential tools. "We have no choice," he stated with conviction. "If we don't take action immediately, her airways might shut down entirely." The ensuing moments unfolded in a whirlwind of urgency and haste. Samantha's throat kept swelling, complicating the intubation process further. The expert maintained his poise, even as beads of sweat formed on his brow while he deftly navigated the tube. The other doctors observed closely, aware that even the slightest error could have dire consequences. Outside the room, Jenny's anguished cries reverberated through the ICU corridor, piercing even the sturdy walls. "Please, Lauren," the specialist murmured softly, carefully maneuvering the tube with painstaking precision. "I understand that you're facing challenges, but I urge you to allow me to assist you." The resident shouted as her blood pressure rose, adrenaline surging through the room. Samantha's body continued to tremble, though the intensity of her movements was starting to fade. The furious crimson splotches on her skin began to diminish, yet they still adorned the majority of her body. In the hall, Lucas restrained Jenny, preventing her from dashing into the room. His heart pounded in his chest as he peered through the slim window of the door. "Why is she becoming so motionless?" Jenny implored, her nails clawing into Lucas's arms with urgency. Is she, "No, sweetheart," Lucas replied, his voice trembling. "The medical team is managing the situation effectively." The subsequent hours unfolded in a whirlwind of feelings. Each new dose of medication kept the medical team in a state of heightened anxiety, apprehensive about the possibility of another adverse reaction. The specialist remained near Samantha, his gaze fixed on her vital signs, interpreting every slight variation. Finally, the crimson stains on her skin started to diminish, revealing her complexion as pale and etched. The nurse reported that her vitals are stabilizing after another check of the monitors, yet she remains quite weak. "Stay vigilant," the expert advised, "we haven't reached safety just yet." As dawn broke, Samantha's fingers twitched ever so slightly, a movement so subtle it was almost imperceptible. The expert was at her side in an instant, illuminating her eyes with a flashlight. Moments later, Jenny, at last permitted entry into the room, grasped her mother's hand with a fierce intensity, as if holding on to the very essence of existence. "Mom," Jenny murmured, her cheeks marked by the remnants of dried tears. "Are you able to hear me?" "Take it easy, champ," the expert advised softly. "She remains deeply sedated." Samantha's eyes slowly opened, filled with confusion and a sense of disorientation. A breathing tube silenced her voice, yet in that fleeting moment when her gaze locked with Jenny's, it felt as if the world had righted itself, if only for an instant. Standing by the doorway, Lucas felt a tightness in his throat, touched by the profound bond shared between mother and daughter. Yet, he caught a glimpse of something disconcerting in Samantha's eyes, a fear that appeared unrelated to the tube. "Something feels off," Lucas murmured, edging nearer. "Observe the depth in her gaze." The expert swiftly started to assess Samantha. "Samantha, do you experience any discomfort?" Her eyes brimmed with escalating dread as she started to reach out desperately, attempting to feel her legs. The specialist's expression tightened, and he promptly began conducting fundamental neurological assessments. As every test returned without a hint of response, his demeanor shifted to one of increasing gloom, while Samantha's gestures became increasingly frantic. "Doctor," Lucas's voice trembled with concern. "What is going on with her?" The specialist's response was composed, yet it subtly revealed his underlying worry. "It is essential that we conduct additional tests." The ensuing moments dragged on interminably. The expert gently pressed on different areas of Samantha's legs, assessing her reflexes and sensitivity, yet there was no response. Jenny, her gaze fixed, grasped the bed railing with a firm grip, her petite frame trembling with each deepening frown from the doctor. Lucas placed a comforting hand on Jenny's shoulder. "What is preventing her legs from moving?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Doctor, can you tell me why my mom is in tears?" Her eyes, brimming with tears, mirrored the deep sorrow that her mother appeared to be enduring. "I need to have a word with both of you," the specialist said, gesturing for them to step aside. "If your heart resonates with this, we invite you to share a comment and tell us the birthday of your cherished one. Every love is worthy of celebration. Let us proceed with the tale we are weaving today." The reality hit with a force that was unyielding. He described the neurological damage with a gravity that commanded attention. A critical deficiency of oxygen throughout the ordeal, coupled with the extended seizure, resulted in considerable damage to the spinal cord. Jenny remained quiet, her eyes wide with wonder as Lucas enveloped her in a protective embrace. She won't regain her ability to walk, will she?" Jenny finally inquired, her voice heavy with emotion. "The specialist assured us that we are doing everything possible. At this moment, she finds herself unable to move." The breathing tube stifled Samantha's soft sobs, saturating the room with a profound sense of sorrow. Her eyes remained fixed on her motionless legs, tears welling up and cascading down her ashen cheeks. Jenny hurried to her mother's side, clutching her hand firmly, while Lucas remained motionless, burdened by remorse. The expert watched the family with a profound sense of sorrow, recognizing that their lives had been forever altered. It was his mistake, Lucas mused, running his fingers through his thinning hair. Had I only placed my trust in her from the very beginning. The expert's soothing tone interrupted his stream of consciousness, as if he possessed the ability to peer into his thoughts. No one is to blame here. At times, preserving a life requires unforeseen sacrifices. In the sterile ICU room, surrounded by the steady hum of machines and glaring lights, a complex tapestry of relief and heartbreak unfolded. Samantha had endured, yet her reality had been transformed. Jenny fluctuated between weeping and comforting smiles, as Lucas maintained a silent, observant demeanor. The expert spoke of recovery and the journey that lay ahead, yet his voice felt remote, as though it were echoing from a different realm. "We'll overcome this, Mom," Jenny murmured, gently kissing Samantha's hand. "Regardless of the challenges ahead, I will be by your side at every turn," she vowed, her face marked by tears yet shining with determination. "And I won't leave your side," Lucas declared, his voice brimming with determination. Time passed slowly as the medical team meticulously extracted Samantha's breathing tube. Every breath she drew unaided seemed to demand great effort, as if even the faintest motion required all her energy. The expert stayed nearby, attentively monitoring her vital signs. Finally, when she found her voice, it emerged raspy and soft, yet her initial words were directed to her daughter, who held her hand with steadfast devotion. "My love, I can't express how thankful I am that you're here," Samantha whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What is happening that I can't sense my legs?" she inquired, her voice quivering, directed as much inwardly as outwardly. "Mom, please, just hold on a moment," Jenny said, fighting back her tears. "The physician advises that you should take some time to recuperate." The expert moved ahead, bearing the weighty task of validating Samantha's deepest concerns. He carefully described the spinal injury, elaborating on how a severe reaction to the medication resulted in nerve damage. Every word appeared to ripple through Samantha, carving a visage of torment that transcended mere physical anguish. From the threshold, Lucas observed, his form tense and poised, like a tightly wound spring, on the verge of release. "How am I supposed to work in this manner?" Samantha inquired, her voice trembling with emotion. "What steps can I take to ensure my daughter's well-being?" "Miss Samantha," Lucas finally said, stepping closer. "Rest assured, there's no need for concern regarding that." Suddenly, Samantha stirred uneasily in her bed, her words breaking apart and drifting away. Her previously pale cheeks blossomed into a vibrant red that swiftly intensified. The heart monitors beeping quickened, and droplets of sweat formed on her forehead. Jenny instinctively recoiled, a sense of unease washing over her, as her mother softly spoke of black-winged angels twirling on the ceiling. A nurse reported that temperatures are rising rapidly. She mentioned that her fever is rising. "Mom," Jenny exclaimed with a hint of worry. "What's with the way she's speaking?" The atmosphere became tumultuous, as Samantha's speech oscillated between coherent statements and frenzied chatter. She described stairways leading to the heavens and frozen butterflies alighting on her unfeeling legs. As the specialist observed the monitors, their expression gradually transformed from worry to a hint of hopefulness. "What brings that smile to your face?" Lucas inquired, noticing the shift in the doctor's expression. "This fever," the specialist replied, "might be precisely what we required." While the medical team focused on maintaining Samantha's stability, the doctor clarified that the fever might indicate her immune system was actively engaging with the treatment. It felt like her body was launching a powerful, internal resistance. Jenny's eyes darted from her mother's reddened cheeks to the cacophony of screams. "It feels as though a war is raging within her," Jenny inquired, starting to understand the circumstances. "Indeed," the expert affirmed, "and at this moment, we require her body's defenses to continue the battle." As her fever intensified, Samantha's visions became increasingly vivid. She started to sing soft lullabies, her hands stretching out to grasp unseen wonders in the atmosphere. At times, she cried out for her parents, who had long departed, yearning for their forgiveness for not having been the daughter she wished to be. As Samantha's frantic cries filled the air, claiming that snakes were coiling around her immobile legs, Lucas found himself restraining Jenny from rushing to her side. "Please don't go," Samantha pleaded, struggling against her invisible adversaries. "The serpents, they constrict," she murmured, adrift in a realm of frenzied dreams. "I need to do something," Jenny implored, struggling to escape Lucas's hold. At that moment, a nurse rushed into the room, clutching the most recent blood test results. Her serious demeanor compelled the specialist to set aside his notes and quickly move across the room. As he perused the report, his complexion slowly faded to a pallid hue. Lucas, having grown sensitive to the doctor's nuances over the last few hours, experienced a chill of apprehension. "What comes next?" he inquired, grasping Jenny tightly. The doctor responded with an air of ambiguity, "Already making their way toward the exit, leaving me in need of lab confirmation." In that moment, Samantha's mumbling, filled with confusion, echoed the urgent beeping of the monitors. She started to paint a picture of a garden where vibrant flowers erupted from her motionless legs, each petal burning her skin yet leaving no trace behind. The expert soon reappeared, bearing additional test results. His expression was a mixture of expert worry concealing a more profound, serious discomfort. "When can I expect to receive confirmation?" the nurse inquired softly. "Time is running out," the specialist said, his gaze fixed on the latest results. As the sun began its descent, Samantha appeared to find a measure of calm. Her temperature had leveled off, yet it remained elevated. Her words, while fragmented, had lost their once haunting intensity. Worn out, Jenny had dozed off in a chair beside the bed after countless hours of vigilance. Seizing the opportunity, Lucas made his way toward the expert in the corridor. "What did you discover in her blood?" he insisted softly yet resolutely. "Mr. Warburton," the doctor started, with a hint of uncertainty. It's important for you to know that we don't have complete clarity at this moment. An unexpected alarm, distinct from the earlier beeps, erupted from the room, breaking his concentration. Samantha jolted awake, her eyes wide and locked onto an unseen presence that only she could perceive. Her voice, distinct and piercing, cut through the atmosphere of the room. "They've come for me." "Who is present, Mother?" Jenny inquired, her eyes wide with surprise. "The celestial beings," Samantha responded. "It has been said that something was discovered in my blood." A shiver coursed through Lucas at her words. The expert was deeply engrossed in the analysis of the new monitors, his demeanor becoming increasingly focused with every reading. The formidable mogul, accustomed to wielding authority over every aspect of his existence, now found himself completely at the mercy of circumstances as they spiraled beyond his grasp. How could she ever have any idea? The expert murmured, shifting his gaze between the test results and the patient burning with fever. "Doctor," Lucas said, his voice wavering. "What have you discovered, precisely?" As the tempest begins to settle, so too did Samantha's fever gradually subside in the early morning light. The monitors captured a steady, gradual decline in her temperature, with each slight dip resonating as a small triumph. The expert observed each fluctuation in her vital signs, his expression tired yet focused. As her fever subsided, Samantha's rambling words quieted, allowing her to drift into a serene, more peaceful slumber. The nurse confirmed the temperatures were dropping as she checked the digital thermometer. At last, everything has returned to its usual state. Gentle morning light filtered through the blinds as Samantha's eyelids fluttered, her consciousness gradually awakening. The frantic spark in her eyes had vanished, giving way to a calm, unwavering stare. Jenny instinctively leaned over her as Lucas moved in closer to the bed. "Prudent." The expert commenced conducting straightforward assessments, meticulously observing her neurological reactions. "How do you feel today?" he inquired, directing a faint beam into her gaze. "Distinct," Samantha responded, her voice gravelly. "There's an unusual sensation in my legs." A heavy stillness enveloped the room as the specialist approached to assess her legs, probing for sensitivity by applying pressure to various points and closely watching her responses. In an instant, Samantha emitted a gasp that caused everyone in the room to startle. "I felt that," she exclaimed, her eyes brimming with tears. "Doctor, I sensed your presence." The examination stretched on for several more minutes, as Samantha's tears streamed down her face with every new area of sensation that returned. Lucas lingered close, his heart pounding, as Jenny practically bounced with delight next to her. The expert jotted down notes, brimming with barely contained enthusiasm. "The experimental treatment," he whispered, glancing at his notes. "The fever likely intensified its impact. Does this imply that she will be able to walk again?" Jenny inquired, her voice brimming with optimism. Samantha tried to shift in the bed, spurred on by the tingling in her legs, yet her muscles still lagged, not quite heeding the commands from her brain. Her expression contorted with irritation as she came to the unsettling realization that, even though she sensed the contact, her body remained unresponsive, trapped in a state far removed from her former agility. "What is preventing me from moving correctly?" she inquired, her tone laced with hopelessness. "Remain composed," the expert suggested softly. "Reclaiming sensation is merely the first step." A group of physiotherapists was quickly assembled to evaluate her progress. Every test revealed a complex tapestry of her healing journey. Certain regions reacted to contact, while others stayed annoyingly unyielding. Samantha felt a tumult of emotions, oscillating between hope and disappointment as fresh revelations came to light. The lead physiotherapist described it as akin to a map. Certain elements are returning, while others require additional time. What is the duration? At last, Lucas posed the inquiry that had been lingering in the air for everyone. Samantha's resolve shone brightly as she insisted on attempting to sit up in bed. With the guidance of the physiotherapist, she was able to rise, though her legs trembled uncontrollably from the effort. Sweat glistened on her forehead as she battled to maintain her stance, determined not to relent despite the fiery ache in her muscles. "I can't just stop here," she whispered, her teeth gritted in determination. "I must accomplish this task." Jenny observed with increasing worry. "Mum, please don't push yourself too hard," she urged, concern evident in her tone, "just take it slow." Yet Samantha pressed forward, resolute in her desire to rise, despite the medical team's pleas for caution. With steady hands, Lucas and the therapist supported her as she cautiously shifted her weight on unsteady legs. For a brief moment, she appeared composed, yet her knees buckled almost instantly. "I've got you," Lucas said swiftly, grasping her just in time to prevent her from tumbling. "I won't let you fall," he reassured, a sense of relief washing over him. Samantha, however, was utterly distraught, her frustration bubbling to the surface as she murmured, "But I need to." The subsequent exercises were crafted with meticulous attention to detail. The team detailed a step-by-step recovery plan, starting with fundamental movements while in bed. Each small achievement was acknowledged, every bit of recovered movement was a triumph. Jenny remained steadfastly by her side, offering encouragement with each and every effort. The physiotherapist described it as a process akin to relearning how to walk. "Every small step taken matters," she remarked. "But I will reach that destination, won't I?" Samantha inquired, exhausted after yet another round. As the hours unfolded, the medical team persisted in their assessments. Meanwhile, Lucas ventured outside to make calls, coordinating the delivery of specialized therapy equipment to the hospital. Upon his return, he discovered Samantha peacefully resting while Jenny enthusiastically recounted to a nurse all the destinations she intended to explore with her mum once she was back on her feet. Lucas leaned in and said to Jenny, "She's just as tough as you. She will overcome this challenge." "I know she will," the girl replied, her eyes blazing with unwavering resolve. "My mother is relentless in her determination." The expert carefully examined the latest tests, contrasting them with his previous observations. His expression conveyed a blend of feelings, a touch of relief at the early achievements, worry about the difficult journey that lay ahead, and a subtle trace of something unspoken that he had yet to share with the family. He whispered softly, "The results appear promising. Yet, much remains to be unraveled," he remarked, glancing at the new blood test results laid out before him. The hospital room eventually embraced a serene stillness as Samantha drifted into slumber after yet another therapy session. The consistent beeping of the monitors conveyed a sense of calm, a welcome reprieve. Lucas looked over at Jenny, observing the way her eyelids sagged with fatigue after countless restless nights spent in a hard chair. Her attire, the very garments she had donned since that fateful day of her attempted theft, hung wrinkled and soiled. "You really ought to take a break," Lucas suggested softly. "Your mother wouldn't want to see you in this state," he said, moving in closer. "I can't just leave her by herself," Jenny insisted, her weary voice trembling. "What if she requires my presence?" Lucas comforted her, assuring that the medical team would look after Samantha as they stepped outside for a moment. He assured her of a delightful meal and a visit to her home, allowing her the chance to refresh and change her attire. Jenny paused, her gaze darting between her mother and Lucas, until the growl of her stomach prompted her decision. For just a brief moment, she consented, pressing a gentle kiss to her mother's forehead. "Promise will return shortly?" she inquired, her eyes filled with optimism. "I promise," Lucas replied, leading her out of the room. "If there's any change, the doctors will call us right away." As Lucas's elegant, high-end vehicle glided through the tight, dilapidated roads of Jenny's neighborhood, it appeared almost out of place. Upon arriving at the aged structure, an unmistakable sense of change lingered in the air. The entrance stood obstructed by sturdy wooden boards, with an official eviction notice prominently displayed above. "No," Jenny whispered, her complexion draining as the truth dawned on her. "This can't be happening," she implored, her voice trembling with dread. "Take it easy, sweetheart," Lucas said softly, trying to soothe her, but she was already racing toward the entrance. The boards were haphazardly affixed, creating a slender gap that Jenny skillfully maneuvered through. Lucas trailed behind, grappling with the challenge of maneuvering his broader build through the narrow opening. Within the confines of the building, an unsettling stillness enveloped the space, casting shadows that whispered of a past life once brimming with comfort. As they ascended the stairs, eviction notices covered the walls, each one dated the day they hurried Megan to the hospital. "All our stuff," Jenny whispered, her hands quivering as she extended them toward the apartment door. What's the best way to express this to her? Jenny let out a wail, consumed by sorrow. The affluent gentleman attempted to offer her solace, yet her anguish ran far too profound. "Allow me to inspect this," Lucas remarked, scrutinizing one of the notices with great attention. The apartment remained untouched, a perfect snapshot of their hurried departure. Unwashed dishes piled high in the sink, a coffee cup with just a sip left, and an array of medicines strewn across the table. Jenny hurried into the bedroom she shared with her mother, only to discover eviction notices scattered across the unmade beds. Her cries echoed through the empty space as she sank to the ground. With great effort, she sobbed, grasping an unfilled pill bottle tightly. "I peddled sweets, I hawked various items on the street, and when the sales fell short, I discreetly took just enough for my mother's medicine. Yet the rent was simply overwhelming," she lamented, her voice trembling. Through her tears, she shared how each dollar she earned was dedicated to her mother's medication. She revealed to Lucas a battered shoebox concealed under the bed, filled with crumpled pharmacy receipts and bills. Lucas perused the documents, a tightness forming in his gut, as he grasped the exorbitant expense of the medications for a family battling to keep food on the table. "What's the best way to share this with her?" Jenny inquired, drawing her knees close, her voice heavy with hopelessness. "You don't need to share that with her at this moment," Lucas said firmly. "Allow me to take care of this." At that moment, the sharp sound of his cell phone shattered the thick quiet of the apartment. The hospital's number appeared on the phone screen, sending their hearts into a frenzy. The specialist's voice on the other end carried an unusual intensity, a sense of urgency that was palpable, yet devoid of panic. He selected his words with precision, as if he questioned their validity. "You must return immediately," the doctor insisted. "You must witness this firsthand." "Has her situation deteriorated?" Lucas inquired, guiding Jenny toward the exit with purpose. Yet, rather than providing a definitive response, the doctor merely pressed them to move quickly. The journey to the hospital was challenging. Lucas accelerated more aggressively than normal, while Jenny clutched the edge of her seat tightly. Her tears had ceased, yet apprehension lingered in her gaze. Despite Lucas's efforts to maintain his calm demeanor, the tension in his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel revealed his inner turmoil. "Please don't let her die," Jenny murmured repeatedly, her words echoing with desperation. "Not at this moment, please." Upon arriving at the hospital, the parking lot appeared to stretch endlessly from the entrance. Before the car came to a complete halt, Jenny sprang out, her petite legs propelling her directly toward the ICU. Lucas trailed closely, reaching the elevators just in time. His chest constricted as they observed the floor numbers ascend slowly. "Why couldn't they just tell us what happened?" Jenny asked, her foot tapping with impatience. "At times, witnessing things firsthand holds more weight," Lucas responded, even if he harbored the same doubts as she did. At the ICU doors, the specialist stood poised, his expression inscrutable beneath a veneer of composed expertise. He lifted a hand to silence their inquiries, motioning for them to come along. The corridor extended infinitely ahead, each footfall resonating like a heartbeat in the silence. "Prepare yourselves," the doctor warned as they neared the room. For what, Lucas wished to inquire, yet his voice deserted him as the door swung open. Within the room, the monitors emitted a steady beep, their rhythm unwavering, yet an unmistakable shift lingered in the air. The room appeared enveloped in a gentler, cozier glow, as if it had undergone a metamorphosis. And there, perched gracefully on the bed that had once held her still form, Samantha offered a subtle smile. Her legs hung over the edge of the mattress, her movements feeble yet vibrant with vitality. "My dear," she whispered gently, her arms extending toward Jenny. "Stay right there," Samantha said, her face beaming with a radiant smile. All Lucas could muster was, "Oh my gosh," as the specialist nervously rifled through his notes. With careful, measured movements, Samantha set her bare feet on the frigid hospital floor, her toes curling from the cold, a sensation she hadn't anticipated feeling again so soon. The expert instinctively moved closer to assist, yet she lifted her hand, wordlessly signaling him to allow her the chance to handle it herself. "Wait for me, honey," Samantha choked out, her voice quivering with deep emotion. "I wish to make the journey to you on my own." Jenny remained motionless at the threshold, her eyes wide with anticipation, observing her mother's every action. She grasped the edge of her shirt firmly, as if restraining herself from dashing ahead. "Mommy," she murmured, her voice gentle, tears cascading down her cheeks. Samantha's initial steps were unsteady, reminiscent of a young child's, as she leaned gently against the bed for support. Yet, with every small advance, her movements became increasingly assured and stable. The expert observed in wonder, his hand gliding rapidly over his notes. "It's simply astonishing," Samantha murmured, her eyes glistening with tears of happiness. "Oh my goodness, it's absolutely astonishing." Lucas rested his hands on Jenny's shoulders, sensing her tremble with anticipation. The expert, visibly affected, examined the screens with a trembling voice. "The treatment exceeded our highest expectations. The distance between the bed and the door seemed to stretch endlessly." With every step Samantha took, a hush fell over the crowd. The rhythmic pulse of the monitors resonated, setting the stage for this extraordinary moment. "You're really making it happen, Mom." Jenny burst into cheers, her enthusiasm overflowing. Lucas felt Jenny's desire to rush to her mother, yet she restrained herself, recognizing the significance of this moment. Samantha pressed on, her resolve strengthening, a smile blossoming with every stride she took. "Indeed, darling," she answered, now merely a few paces closer. "I am returning to you." As Samantha approached the final 2 steps, her legs trembled ever so slightly. For a breath-catching moment, it seemed as though she might falter.